o te tātou tutu whātasi ise mata upu e manuia I Samoa nei ma le lumanai, o le mea te tau na whai. Mai avatu ai le nganga whaafitai, lau a whionga Anae awha, ia marwhala paputonga umo lo tau mwhai le nei whamoe moe. E lei titi le sao tā ua, aisea, e au le tau ola au le whamota. E malanga mai o tātou ainga I Samoa mo whale velave, a tā upu ma whale ainga, me whale tumalo, me whale nu, me whale kalisia, peitai. O tātou mai te wina le te leo lea fianga o nol poloka, ui o lea. Au tātou te loto vai vai, ei au wala e whaia. Mai avatu aila o lango le mta upu o le uforsi malai, o le utou amata mea, o isi fo ia au wala wha te mokalasi, e wha leo ai lea nganuu, lea ia te tau, a tangata anuu, la tau te wha leo I nai o la tau langona, mamanatu, ini mta upu e fito I tonu I le manuia o tangata anuu lau tele.
Taitaina I tātou wha moe nei afi. Le evangelia luka mata pue wha, whai pusfuma le valu, e o usfuma le iwa. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 4, verse 18 to 19, Jesus says this, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because He has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." Tonight we gather not just as Samoans, as Tongans, Niueans, Cook Islanders, Fijians, Tokelau. We gather as one family. This is the time when we can put aside the Rugby League Pacific Championship for tonight, as we come together as one voice, one petition, and one plea. Let our people move freely. In a world where there are more than 60 nations that can travel to Aotearoa without a visa, yet our own brothers and sisters, our fathers and our mothers, our grandparents from the Pacific, they must still ask for permission. This is not a policy issue, this is a justice issue. Because it tells our people, you don't belong on the same level. But tonight we stand and we say enough is enough. Our voice echoes the words of Jesus to proclaim freedom and to set the oppressed free. I believe if Jesus walked through Auckland tonight, He would stand with us, because His heart beats for the marginalized, for the forgotten, for the voiceless. The gospel is not just about saving souls, it's about liberating people from their current situation. You know, our people, we built this land too. We worked in the factories in the 70s. Our elders worked in the hospitals. They harvested the orchards and raised children who now serve as doctors, teachers, and leaders in our nation. So we are not outsiders. We are a part of Aotearoa's story. So when we ask for visa-free travel for our Pacific nations, we're not asking for special treatment. We're asking for fairness. We are asking to be seen as equals in this nation. We are asking for justice. Let us remember that this is a kingdom issue, because God's kingdom is built on justice, built on mercy and equality. So tonight, we don't just stand as Pacific people, we stand as believers, not in anger, but in hope. Because we serve a God who hears the cry of His people, just like He heard the Israelites cry in Egypt. God hears the cry of the Pacific people. He hears the cry of the mother in Niue who wants to visit her sick nephew in the Auckland hospital. God hears the cry of the girl in Tonga wanting to spend a holiday with her family here in New Zealand. God hears the cry of the Niuean father who wants to attend his daughter's wedding. I am a church minister for a Samoan church down the road, and I have led many funeral services, and I have lost count of the number of loved ones and family members from Samoa that could not make it because they could not get their visa approved. God hears the cry of families divided by a policy, not distance. You know, it's easy for us Samoans and Tongans to fill up the Mangere Town Centre, to fill up Otahu with our parades for the rugby league. Why can't we show the same energy for this? At least you won't be wasting your money on petrol with this petition. There's no point saying 685 to the world, yet you are not here tonight to support the 685 to travel the world, especially here in New Zealand, without having to apply for a visa. So let our petition be more than just a piece of paper. Let it be a prophetic act. Let it be our declaration that justice still matters in the kingdom of God. Because when the Pacific people stand together, the oceans move. Let us pray. Lord, you set the captives free. You open the eyes of the blind. You lift the poor from the dust. We pray, Lord, do it again in our day. Hear the cry of our Pacific nations. May your kingdom come in our policies, in our parliament, and in our people. Le atua mātou te mātou whaafoi pēri inga ma le whaaftai lau whio o no luanga le lei a te pātou. Ta māua e sila whia le whaamoe moe le lei a whiaf. Mātou o nauri au na whatau wa ata mā. E le ma whai o na mātou whai le lei whaamoe moe. E au noa ma lo soso ane mai. Mātou te talo ta mā. Soso ane mai mātou whatau wa. So ane mai le mātou tau mwhainga. A wāse manu ue o le tangata Pasifika. I le langi atua. Mātou tuine atu iau luma le whaamoe moe le nea fiafi. Pātasi mai lau fio i le iehi ume uma i lo vi inga. Alo mātou talo whapitoa. I whaamanu wia mai le nei whaamoe moe. A mātou talo ia. Ka tasi ma le telo te talo loto le tangata lava ia. Ia whaia pe elo whinanga. Ai leo mātu loto. Ono Yesu le nā o mai le te talo. Lo mātou te mai o nā. Ia whaia o Yesu. Ia o mai o nā. Pe o whaia le mai. Ia e. So e le mātou. Ia ai tamu. Aso mātou whanau. Awa foi tai tai ai
Whafti tele I lau sunga I le whawhengainga. Taulanga mō lia. Mana tātou whasangi ma le whamua I le atua le ne whiawhi. Tāu si ai le tātou whamui moe le ne whiawhi. Anga le leile atua ia tumula utu. Whatau nuu I le manuia lo wala wina. A wale la fuma moe o filifilia. Si whai atu ala utala lea. Masalo le whaata singa lona whaale nei. Whatoa ma le toe whailoa inga le nei. A o lei wha mautu lo le tāpenanga I lona lasanga mori. I le selu. A e whawhitai lau sunga le whawhengainga le tāpena. O tūlanga masani. O le tātua tulu. Ia. O le mea lo whale le whiongai. Tawa anamalan komiti. Tau wai no tuaile. Le sāro sunga le whawhinga. Whatasi ma le tusi le nā. Mamoli mai malo whaanga le whionga ia misa telefoni. O lo iai uma wha maumaunga. Masalo no tofu mata to mar kopio le tusile ile fi nei e fa fi tele lo sunga le fa ainga o paio Samoa mai ai le vau o ile fa vau pe o iai pele ai ele to e sei malu ma paia sa ma fainga o le tu ai tau no fa pe a fi mai tala mai o ao su mai Samoa ua poto ile ne fiafi. Fa felu atu male fa lolo e fio mai la fionga il consula. Le malo tutto tasso Samoa la fionga afmata. Palu salue fa po le lua. Male mave se le malo le volea fa le malo a wai poto ile ne fiafi. Malo fa vitai malo le soko malo so fo manui ya Samoa. O te loa e tau tele ia fio mai le fiafine tau te whalongolongo isa forsanga langa i leisa o pepa o whaia o uia na le whaasolo solo le tātou po lai maua manatua i le fiafine nei o le a ave uma le tele o le tātou teimi ia i lātou ua tā pena forsanga mo le fiafine nei ai o te whaamalurua to e whaapea o no le mai tau atu e filongia le tātou a fiafi e le na o tātou Samoa o lo i le fiafine nei o le melea o le a tele i lava ina alu i tātou ngana masau i le whaperetania e whapena fo i pepa o le a forosia i le fiafire nei o le a forosia i le ngana whaperetania ai whapea ai ai se vaenga o forosanga o ia pepa e fia malamalama si ane lo ao o wale poi si ane lo ao o le a o tomu fai e wha malamalama tu le ngana whengo fie ina ia malamalama e sau wale teimi e whai ea tātou visiri a ua e malamalama lelei i le ano atoa o le mata upu nei e fiafi o le mātou whasilanga na ma le awa tele le tātou QR code lea o lo whanga solo pe le teimi nei mo i la toe masani le whao ngai no le QR code o lo whao wau pe le tātou QR code le sa te i tāpuni e le aso fitu o le masila nei vai ane lava le fiafi o Taualapini le nei maota masalo walo le sirifia le atunu e taua ina utoe whaapai atu i le tātou atunu o le tau mawhatapaa e matua tapu tutono le nei lotoa o le aso le nei e whaasa i le tau mawhatapaa i tutono le lotoa le nei atu i titia le fionga le taua ana lo fionga i matala mai au whaatawa i le whaamoe le so wana o se mea lofa lea me le fionga le taua ana malana komiti ma le tusi mai le fionga misa tau ina tau ni e le mātou fi tele lo suma metal mai out. So, okay, begin. I've touched on it earlier. I'm just going to touch on it again. Reverend Pastor, thank you so much for the message prepared tonight. The actual presentation has officially started. I honestly thought that we have presenters here tonight, but listening to the message here tonight, it was meant to be for tonight. Reverend Minister, thank you so much for telling. First presentation for us tonight, Dr. Melani Misa Tauveve, Anae, and it'll be followed by presentation by Reverend Alec Toleafoa. They both will be talking about dawn raid and Sitiseni Alemau, Malefa Lolo, Faf Tele. Dr. Melani Matasila, Faf Tai.
Yeah, malo lava everyone, warm Pacific greetings. Malo Toleafoa, langi ma. Yes, thank you, Reverend. Very moved by the message that we've started our whanau today, and we're going to carry that momentum right through. Well, I am Anae's younger sister, and sometimes I wonder why both of us have spent most of our lives fighting for Pacific justice. Fighting for Pacific justice. I started when I was 17 years old as a member of the Polynesian Panther Party. 17 years old, when we faced the racism of the government in this country, growing up in Ponsonby Greylin, our hood. That was the very first birthplace of Pacific community in Aotearoa, was Ponsonby Greylin. So we stand here in terms of fighting for justice. And interesting, because in 1971, when I was 17, there were approximately only 43,000 Pacific people that lived in New Zealand. Only 48,000. And today, the population is now 474,000 plus. And we make up 9% of the total population. But both Anae and myself, we were the children of the first settlers, Pacific settlers that came to Aotearoa in large numbers. And the New Zealand government did not know how to handle us. And the state-sanctioned racism, which they used, the laws, the legislation and the policies they used in the 1970s, is still here, 55 years later. The policies and the legislation, and for you, I will tell you where racism lives. It lives in legislation, the laws of this country. That's where racism lives. And when we go out to the schools and teach them about racism, we say, hey, racist people aren't our enemy. Racism is our enemy. And it's the ideas and the what causes people to think that they are superior to another group of people is what causes it. So we're here that's who we are. We were 17, 18-year-old. We were the very first Pacific political party in New Zealand. Did you know that? We were a political party at that age. Today, some people call us activists. Some people call us freedom fighters. But you know what our own people called us and our elders back in the day? They called us moipi. They called us moipi, and we were. But we stood up. We stood up for our parents who were suffering in the factories. I never saw my dad. I never saw my dad all week except on Sundays at church. He was working so hard in the factories. This is what made us stand up. And stand up against the police brutality and the policies which we saw every day. And that's why Palangis will never know what racism is, because for us it is every day. We wake up to it. We have breakfast with it. We go to school, it's there. We catch a bus, the racism is there. So every day, racism. So our Palangi friends don't know what that feels like. But we have to stop that. This is what drove us as 17-year-olds. Our platform, peaceful resistance against racism. It was in our DNA from our ancestors to fight cruelty with peace. Tupua Tamatete Toleafoa III, who was assassinated by the police constabulary in Samoa along Beach Road. He said, my blood has been spilt for Samoa. Do not avenge it. So it was in our ancestry to fight racism through peaceful means. Number 2, celebrate Mana Pasifika. Celebrate your ethnic identity, no matter what the Palangi say or what the schools are saying about us. Celebrate who we are and learn about our roots. Our children are not taught about our roots in our schools here. We need to change the curriculum so that they can learn about the Pacific homelands. And the third one, educate to liberate. Anyone can go to school and get qualifications, but you know, sometimes the education is not liberating. It doesn't free us from the shackles of the rampant racism that Labour and national governments have forced upon us as Pacific people. So what did we do? We did all these things. So we were called Moipi because our parents thought that we were a gang. But, you know, a gang didn't do these things. We wrote a book called Legal Aid because the police were just picking up our kids walking down Ponsonby Road, beating them down a dark street and then returning them. Police brutality was everywhere along our hood in Ponsonby. So we didn't know our legal aid. So we did a book so that we gave it to all the people in Ponsonby, and they knew how to talk to a policeman if he tries to arrest you for nothing. The legal aid booklet, the TAB, the Tenants Aid Brigade, the landlords were just chucking our people on the street with all their furniture if they didn't pay their rent. So the Panthers stood with the people in the houses and they told the landlords, we're going to go on a rent strike. We're going to bank our rent in another account until we fix up our flat, fix up the repairs and things like that. So the list goes on. That doesn't sound like a gang to me. The pig patrol, we followed the cops' cars around Ponsonby, Grey Lynn, from the pubs. That's where all the police would try and pick up our family members there. We made sure that they were acting legally. Homework centres, Pāremoremo prison visits. We hired a bus. None of us had cars in those days, 1970s. So we hired a bus to take the families to the prison to see their loved ones there. And the protests, we marched on all the front lines. The Polynesian Panther sisters, helped Ngā Tamato, which was the Māori group, for Māori to be established, Te Reo, to be established as a language of New Zealand. So that's what we did. So that was 1971 to 1973, our program, our community survival programs. But then in 1974, something happened. Something happened in 1974, the first dawn raid against Pacific people. But get this, it wasn't the first dawn raid in New Zealand. The Māori people had already been dawn raided. In Parihaka, Taranaki, in Bastion Point, in Auckland, they were dawn raided by the police and the government. But 1974 is when we were first dawn raided, Pacific people were dawn raided. So why? Why were we dawn raided? I mean, those reasons are there. They thought that we were going to take over their jobs, just like what Anae was saying. They're scared that there'll be a stampede and they'll take all the New Zealanders' jobs. What else? There was a collapse in the global economy, just like it is today. There's a collapse in the global economy now, and guess who gets it when that happens? Yes, the immigrants. All the immigrants in America, it's happening to them, all over the world. But we had it first in 1974. And so to get the people's, they made these stories to get people's awareness away from the global economy to law and order. So that's where the overstayers, that's when we started to be called overstayers. So state-sanctioned racism is when the racism is in the law. And these are the laws that allowed them to dawn raid us. And we had to stop those laws and change those laws. So just a little quick example. The Pacific people only made up 33% of the overstayers in 1974. The rest of the overstayers, 70%, were from England, South Africa, Australia. But the people who were arrested and prosecuted, 90% were Pacific people. Only 10% of the Pālangis were arrested. Not one dawn raid happened in the white areas in Auckland. Not one dawn raid in Howick, Remuera, all those districts where Pālangis were. They were all around Grey Lynn and Ponsonby and in the south. So in summary there, only 33% were Pacific overstayers, the rest were European, but the arrests and deportations, 90% Pacific. and only 10% Europeans. But I'm going to get Alec now just to really take you down and to feel the dawn rays and the impact on our people.
Thank you, Associate Professor Upimatasila, Mr. Taubebe, for that context that you've given for the dawn rays. Many of you might be wondering, why are we even talking about the dawn rays today? Well, a lot of the political ideas that gave rise to the dawn raids, a lot of the culture that informed the laws that gave rise to the dawn raids are still present in our legislation today. And it's those same ideas that have produced the situation here, where we, Pacific, have to apply for visas to come to Aotearoa, New Zealand. That's what the dawn raids have to do with today. The other thing that is important for all of us here this evening is to remember. Remembering is very important. Remembering these stories. Remembering the stories that have to do with the visa waiver policy. Because if you and I do not remember these stories, there will be nobody to tell these stories in the days to come. There will be nobody to explain the injustices that Pasifika people have suffered at different times in our history and at different times in our journey through Aotearoa. There will be nobody. This is why it is so important to remember what has happened, but more importantly, not just to remember what has happened, but to remember how we overcame the challenges, how we overcame the struggles that we faced here in our journey in Aotearoa, so that other generations will know that we just didn't lie down and let things happen and do nothing, so that our grandchildren and great-grandchildren can ask us, what did you do about this? What did you do? And what are you going to say? You're going to say that I was here in this meeting this evening. I came here this evening to support this, the purposes of our meeting here this evening. That you came here to speak out against the injustice that is hidden in this legislation, in these laws. You see before you some vital statistics of just 3 days, a long weekend in Tamaki. In 3 days, immigration and police raided 200 houses. And they randomly stopped and checked 856 people on the street. What you don't see there, and what we were never supposed to see, was that in each one of those houses, according to Statistics New Zealand in the 1970s, and many of you here will know that story too, that there was more than just one family in those houses. There were at least 10 people in those houses. Often mum, dad, children, a grandparent, an old or a younger cousin lived in those houses. So it's not just 200 houses. It's 2,000 people. It's 2,000 people in those houses plus the 856. That's nearly 3,000 people. Adults, children, and infants. And what was the result? Just 23 people were found to be here unlawfully. 23 people. But 100% of the 3,000 people felt the terror 100% of the people felt the shame and the pain and the indignity of the dawn raids just in 3 days. Same thing happened in Wellington. That is less than 1% of the total number of houses and people that were impacted by the dawn raids. And those impacts are lasting. They have carried on through the generations. A few years ago, there was another meeting here. It had to do with abuse in care. There was a Tongan gentleman who was here, Kesimoni, some of you may remember him. And he talked about how it was as a boy. He was only a child, and he had a younger brother, a 6-year-old, who was here legitimately for medical reasons. And he gave us testimony right here in front of the Royal Commission on Abuse in Care. And he talked about how frightening it was to realise that he was the one now responsible for looking after his younger brother, who he had no idea how to do that. They had no idea where their parents were taken or when they would be coming back. So now the generations of Tesimoni's family carry that pain and they carry that impact. In 2021, the Polynesian Panther Party advocated to the New Zealand government for an apology for the dawn raids. And we were successful in our bid to get that apology, some 50 years later, but we still got that apology. Many voices in the Pasifika community were yelling out for let's get compensation, let's get money. Many voices were saying let's have pathways to residency. But the voice of the Panthers was very clear. We want healing. We want education for our people. We want our people to know what happened in that time and to remember it. Not to be bitter about it, but to remember it. Because if we don't remember it, no one will be there to tell the story. And so the apology happened. The healing started to happen. The government acknowledged its wrongdoings during the dawn raid, and we hope that somewhere along the line in terms of this petition that the government will also acknowledge another wrongdoing. But in 2023, there was another dawn raid. Even after the apology, 2 years after the apology, there was another dawn raid, a Tongan family out these ways. They didn't call it a dawn raid, they called it an out-of-hours compliance visit. But everyone in the Pasifika community knew that it was a dawn raid. So this was one of the strengths of the apology. Not only did it begin a process of healing where people in our communities were starting to talk about their experiences because there was a sense that they were no longer responsible, they were just not responsible for a lot of what happened. It was a government's problem, not theirs. So in my own family, I had cousins talking to cousins who had never talked about their experience of the dawn raid before because they lived with the shame of it. But the apology allowed people to tell their stories without any sense of guilt or that they did something wrong. So, the apology now changes from an instrument of healing to something that our people can point to and say, you, the government, said this. But now, you've gone back on your word and you are still doing dawn raids. So that is one of the strengths of the apology. We, now in specific communities, can say, you, the government, said this. We already have a history where the government of New Zealand has let us down so many times, where it has lied to us. Many of us recall our own history, the 1980 influenza, the ship that was allowed to come into Samoa. There was a New Zealand administration that did that, knowing that that ship was carrying the influenza. 25% of all Samoans perished because of that. 45% of our leadership, our makais, our sa'os, died because of the incompetence of the New Zealand governments. And that was where the seeds of distrust against the New Zealand government were planted. And they were fed and nourished by things like the dawn raids. So, as a result of that out-of-hours compliance visit with the Tongan family, the government, Immigration New Zealand, realised the big mistake they had made. And so you might have been invited to be part of the discussion with Immigration New Zealand, because as the Polynesian Panthers, we were invited to talk about the legislation and the changes that we wanted to see. Everybody in the Pacifica community was hoping that the government would abolish the policies that allowed the dawn raids to happen. So they employed a fancy lawyer, costing you and me thousands of dollars, to come up with a better solution for the dawn raids. We thought that this would be the end of the dawn raids. But again, our hopes were disappointed by the government. All they did was change the procedure. So the dawn raids can still happen. Someone can knock on your door at dawn and ask for your immigration papers. That can still happen. So along with that, still unresolved injustice, we have this. We have this. The visa waiver. So if you want to start to make things right for our community, if, as our Fale said, if you want to fulfill that gospel mission to relieve those who are being oppressed and to free those who are captives to policies such as this, and we're talking about ourselves, then today, in just a few minutes of your time, write your name on this petition and send a message to this government that the Pacifica people, Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, Niue, Hukarani, are not going to tolerate this. This is our opportunity. And I want to thank all of the people who have been spearheading and have been leading this cause, Pacifica Justice, particularly Whiunga Anae, Arthur Anae, and all of those who have supported him, yourselves, and the 27,000 people who have already signed this petition. So let your names be among those who have signed them. Let your names and your voices not just be heard here, but your voices and your prayers be heard in the great beyond, where our God is. Thank you very much for your time and for your support to come here this evening from where you have, leaving behind all the things that you have just to be here. And I ask God's blessing on you all, and that you may know God's peace in your life as you go about your day-to-day living.
Tua mesi sta tu pati tele mo tato for sana mata. Sunga Jamata Professor Melani Luka Matsila, Mr. Tove Anae, Marsunga Fafenga Alec Toleafoa. Tawai na fapu ule umir forsangan fai manino. Fatwa si forfitu tau sangan martua le fionga ya Luka Matsila, Marsunga Fafenga. Ole temile na matai na usul peselia. Ole teo telo tātou ye I ele tau nu mai New Zealand na te. A ole peselea ole whaai longa lana o New Zealand I tangata Pasifika, I tangata Samoa, e leo se pese fau nei, ole pese waleva. A watu le waa ati ngāna I loa lai tangata furu, ai a watu ala waa I Samoa, lea tātou te loa le mea ne tupu. Tuli tau si o solo whao ngāta I whao e su e solo ai, tangata Samoa whai mai wa o vaso I New Zealand. Whaato ese le te mai tai pālamia o le malo New Zealand. I leanga ma le whaatangata ese ina o tangata Samoa e le whainga malo New Zealand. O le fisili mo o le vefina nei. E te si le fia o whaini ai o le whaato ese ngalea. E te si le fia o whaini ai o le whaato ese ngalea. Leana sauna o le sunga le whaafengai. Fato a furi mai nei are papatua le tamata I pala mia o man fato ese. Ai to oso nei ale si don rei. O le fisili le na a wala o mai te o tat. E iai ni ai o le fato ese ngale. A to e tutupu ia mea wana o le fa manatu ia tatou uma le mea na tupu. Se furu ma le fitu tau sanga taruai. O loo tupu pea I le teme nei. O lau le tau talala I sia tunu o le Pasifika, e whapitoala o tatala ia Samoa. E iai ea se mea Samoa na ngalo ia New Zealand. E iai ea se tatou mea wa ngalo I le nei tunu. Ai toe a le ai se vai pano le tunu ule nei, e le longo ai New Zealand, a o tama whanau a Samoa. A o le nei ai whailafu. O le mafua anga le nā, ua toe la langa I le manatu lea. O le tātou toe tāfo ia lea, I le uru o le whao, I le nei matau. O te wala watu ma le whalalo le te fono le Pacific Justice, leo whianga Anae, whio mai, I lau sauno ngai wha malama tire le matapu a umaloa, le forasanga le whianga le tauana, o na tatala lo le avanoa, Moa tātou visit, whapetania pe whasamo, it doesn't matter. Mai tātou pati mo le whionga ia Anae.
Patalo whalapa le pa iam malua whio nepo, pa teilava ne avanoa. Just going back to what we've been speaking about and the injustice that New Zealand has dealt not only to the Samoan people, but to the Pacific community at large. As we talked about Samoa going back to 1918, when a large percentage of our Samoan people died because of the flu epidemic. Then we followed that with the killing of Tamasese. They marched with no weapons, no nothing, and peace. And then we come forward, and we come to the dawn raid periods, which they just spoken about now. They forgot it was the Pacific people who came to New Zealand in the 40s to man the factories of New Zealand as it started to develop at that time. They brought the Maoris in from the villages as well. They were brought into Auckland. We built this country back then. And when they went through a recession, the first thing was, get rid of them. We don't need them anymore. The use-by date's over, and thus the dawn raids and the way we were treated. Totally unacceptable at the time. Followed by that, was the Fale Lesa case of 1982. Fale Lesa was to be deported from New Zealand. Luckily, we had two young lawyers in Wellington who had studied what the immigration issue was with the Samoan people. And they identified very clearly those born between 1924 and 49 were British subjects who automatically became New Zealanders on the 1st of January 1949. And so this case was taken eventually to the Privy Council because every court in New Zealand was against us. But these lawyers were adamant that they were right. So our Samoan community throughout New Zealand raised over $60,000, which was a lot of money in 1980s. They took the case to the Privy Council, and the 5 law lords overnight said, these people are legitimately New Zealanders. And they included in that heirs, and they also included that any woman married to someone born between 24 and 49 had the same rights. 42 years we wondered and wondered where we were going. Most of our people had written it off. They said, you can't change this. This is New Zealand law. And didn't support what we were trying to do back then. And I raised that in 97. Took the case. I even took Dr. Barton to the caucus of the National Party, and he spoke to them and said, you guys have got this wrong. You've got to change this thing now. They ignored him, totally ignored him. And so for 27 years, we marched along waiting for an opportunity. Now, first thing that happened was back in 2003. And it's unfortunate that Maeawa's not here, because she led the campaign for us in Samoa, and Leota Itua and Tuia, and many others. And we marched in Samoa 2 or 3 times, letting New Zealand know we meant business, and we did. The saddest thing for me, when this was all passed last year, 80% of those people that walked with us in the rain, sat in puddles of water, were no longer here to get what they walked and battled for. That's the sad thing. And yet, what they gave us was 80%. Still fighting today that they've got to recognise those women that the Privy Council said were entitled. And so that journey was a long journey. We marched in Samoa. We went to Parliament in 2003 with 100,000 names on a petition. But we still didn't get what we wanted then. So last year when Te Ano Tuiono, a Green MP, had a private members bill, that came up and was to do with re-looking at Samoan citizenship. So we picked it up and we ran with it. We worked hard with it. We had a great committee then, the Mosi Tseni, but the support of the people were all there. We got there for this reason. I spoke with David Seymour, the leader of ACT, and I spoke with Winston Peters. Both knew this was wrong, but we didn't talk about it publicly in any way at all. Because had the National Party heard about this, they would have canned it there and then because of their affiliations. So we kept it under the wraps. When we finally got it to the first reading, and some were there, the National Party stood up and said they were against it. It was very hard for Cameron Brewer to say that, because he worked for me in Parliament and did a lot of the research on what we had. But he had a job to do. But what blew them out was when the ACT Party stood up and said, no, we are supporting. And then New Zealand First stood up, we are supporting this as well, to go to the first reading. So that was the reason we got success, because we knew the Labour Party, the Greens and Te Pati Maori were supporting us as well. And as you all know, the outcome was, it went to the second reading, which meant we had an opportunity now for the voices of the Samoan people to be heard by government MPs for the first time ever to do with the Privy Council decision. At the end of that time, even the MPs were in tears when they heard the voices of our people and the pain they went through, and in the end the National Party had nowhere to go but to come unanimously with everybody else, and we got a decision. And so last year we got Samoan citizenship for our people born between 24 and 49. So they were able to get their New Zealand citizenship, travel to New Zealand. I believe there's more than 2,000 here now. And those idiots in Wellington didn't want to listen. I said, you must pay these people 50% of the New Zealand pension on the proviso they stayed in Samoa and had the freedom to come and go. They rejected that. So now what's happened? They come here, they get an emergency benefit, they have access to the hospitals and everything else, which actually cost them a lot more than having listened to the first case that was put up. So that was getting us past that. Then, for a long time, the mistreatment of us by the New Zealand Immigration Office and their officials. And they're the people I want to hammer, their officials, who guide the ministers of Parliament of what to do. They turn around and they've always hammered us by saying, we are overstayers, overstayers, overstayers. That's the only weapon New Zealand has against us. Back in the dawn rate, 25 to 30% were overstayers. The others weren't touched. And today I'm arguing it's the same number. And that's where we are now. And so, why are we fighting for this? The numbers go like this. 60 countries of the world. Total population, 1.65 billion people. 1.65 billion people. Nearly 20% of the world at that number. And the world population is about 8 billion. The population of the Pacific people and 16 nations of the Pacific Forum is just under 16 million. 16 million. And if we took Papua New Guinea out, with their 12 million, it leaves only 4 million. Today, the biggest insult I've had for a while, they announced China can come via Australia into New Zealand visa-free for a visit. That to me is an insult to us in the Pacific as we strive to get what we want. And so the argument is, we came in the 40s, we built this country. And we did build this country. They can never deny that. They know today the RSS scheme has turned fruit and vegetables into $1 billion export. Who's doing that? The Pacific people. We did that. And so if we look at anything else in this country, in government departments, in universities, in sport, whatever, there is absolutely nothing in this country that a Pacific person can do. We have reached out and shown them, just give us the opportunity and we will show you that we can do it. You know, at any level of New Zealand today, we have reached the top in everything. And so they can't keep on saying that we are failures, and all I'm asking is, give us the opportunity to show you what we can do. And that's what we're after. So what are we answering is simply this. We want to be treated equally as per those 60 other countries. And because of their cry about overstaying, I've said to them, overstaying has been the creation of New Zealand immigration themselves, not the people themselves. Because if you make it difficult for people to come, they are going to stay as long as they can. There is nothing there that says, gives them the confidence that if they went home, they're going to come straight back. Because it was hard enough to get the documentation just to come in that first place. And there's the creation of what the overstayers are all about. And I've said to them, the answer to what we are trying to fix here is give us the same treatment as everybody else. But the rider I'm putting on it is simply this. if somebody overstays in New Zealand without an extension application in the pipeline, they will be deported. And they won't be coming back for 10 years. Now, people saying I'm pretty harsh, but I'm telling you this much. Do you all agree that one person breaks the rules and we all pay? I'm not buying into that, because that's what will happen. And so the government is saying, if we go this way, who is going to take responsibility for these people to go back within the required time? And I said, if we accept that, then you need to accept simply this. After 3 months, and the person leaves on the required date, they can go to Australia or to Fiji and come back that same day or the next day and get another 3-month visitor's permit. Why should you overstay? Why should you want to overstay and jeopardize everything when it is so simple? So those are the rules that we're putting out there with what we're fighting for right here, for them to listen to our plea and treat it equally. And so I won't going on too much, because it's pretty clear, I think, to everybody what I'm trying to say to you. We want to be treated equally. We have built this country equally with everybody else, and stop discriminating against us. I won't, like Masila does, use the racism word, because I'm going to tell you something. New Zealanders in this country have no idea of the way New Zealand immigration treats us. No idea. Because everyone I talk to, they say to me, why are you talking about this? We thought you guys were already here. And that's why when the newspaper article we put out last week, was explaining exactly what is going on, so they understand it. You know, last year, it was about May or June when I was in Samoa on the citizenship case. I found out that the Samoan Office of Immigration, New Zealand, opened for 1 hour a day. 1 hour a day to service 200,000 plus Samoans. That is a direct insult on us that they would treat us this way. And their answer was, oh, they can do it on the internet, online, and all this rubbish. Well, who the hell knows how to do that? Even New Zealanders don't know how to do that. But that's the insult they gave us. And so we raised that when we were talking about the citizenship issue, and it suddenly struck home with the members of Parliament themselves. And they and Winston Peters went straight in and said, this needs to be fixed right now. And as you know, November last year, that office has now reopened 8 hours a day in Samoa. From 1 hour a day to 8 hours a day. That's the power and the strength that we can do if we stand together and use our power. Look, we have a lot of power. Our Pacific have a lot of power. And it's time we stood together. And we hope and pray that this is the lead for us to stick together as a Pacific nation of one. And don't let New Zealand government again mistreat us. Look, I am very confident we can win this. Absolutely we can win this. And we're going to stand together and we're going to do it. We are going to do it. We're not going to let them walk over us anymore. I've warned them. I said, you'll have to fight me until the day I die. Worst thing for you is when I drop dead, those that are following me won't have the whāloalos that I have. They'll be more direct and demanding of what they want. And let's hope we're not going to get there. So all of you that are here today, every vote counts. Every vote counts. We are all equal. Today is our day to stand together. And I stand in front of you now and can tell you that the numbers that are voting right now, I think by this time has probably exceeded 29,000. I'm hoping. Let's hope by Friday night, midnight, we'll pass that. And I'm pretty sure we will, because the momentum is building up now. And I want to thank all our media, all our people out there. This last week, we put stuff out, 4-page ads, Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu, Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, and here in New Zealand, just to drive the people to realise to come and support us. So we've done everything we can. I have got a fantastic team of people around me. That's the nucleus, what's driving it. But the team is bigger than that. And the team is each and individual ones of you who are all part of the team. So with all that, I'm going to say thank you. Whakataitele lava. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, you can have a rest, Anae. We're going to watch the video now. Usumayra mai mo marsasila or if you tell mulmuli may mo le fiong ni parbia.
O te mua no whātula watu, I le paia sautua whawhawha o sa mawhainga ua tātou mafuta, I le nei fo I bae ngau le aso. Paia lava e tū mau a wā Samoa ma ona tūlanga whalupe, I paia whāletala le lei, ma malu whāle atunu utainane, ma malu whāle malo. O te ofolo whātung whātalo whātu I le swafa manu malo le tātou wali o Yesu Kiriso. O ia lava o le tātou tapasā ma le puruvanga, o mauai le tātou whātuatua I le atua. O ia o le ala upumoni ma le ola. Au te whātalo whātu I le nganga whāloalo I le paia mawalunga o le tātou mawhitanga. I le nei fo I tū lao le aso. A wā le aso na tofa ia ma le aso na taupule. O le aso. Le atau pule aise mawhitanga le paia mawalunga o si tātou watunu. I le paia le nofo a whawhengainga. Sunga le teitai o sauninga, ia taina nei fo I le paia mawalunga o whawhengainga taulangi. O tau whaletua o tātou mafuta I le nei aso mātango fie. O le fo e whawailolo le paia mawalunga o Samoa I ona tūlanga, paia ma mamalu masani. E malu ai Samoa I ona sā ma ona whainga. Paia la valea wā inga ma la tu tama. Tama mo la tu ainga. Leo songa tu mo mapule I tu au ma la taua. Ainga I le tai ma le waa o fonti. E manatu fo I paia ma mamalu whaale malo le tātou te ufana poto ma tātou whelua I fifia. I no whanga tu te tonu o le tātou malo tu to tasio Samo o le o lo o fio aile. Tama le malo I le fionga le konsum sili. Fionga ia whemata polu surefa pori lua. Te nane le ofisa wa malu. Ia le wafa whenga iei ma le tātou malo. Ma le whainga malo I New Zealand nei. Ai wo tautala ma le ava ma le whaalo al tele whailo ngai, ia ma mamuri atuaile nganga whaatai tele. Le paia ma le mamalu o sio tātou watunu atoa, ia o loo maua maile nei tautalanga, a me se fo I le tātou mawhitanga, I le nei fo I taimi o le soifuanga ma le nei whaale tau aso. Ona ua whaile nei mawhitanga I le mata upu, e winga I sio tātou watunu le wafa whenga iai, o le tātou malo Samoa ma le malo New Zealand, a o loo whatawhetawhea I nei sa I ngā malos. O manatuai e whai le se tautalanga whapenei. Ono le o mai o le fionga ia Anae, awha Anae. Ia ono le whamoe moe, o le taua vea meina o le tātou tālu sanga, tui nātu. I le malo New Zealand e ala I tātou visa whewai, e whawhaingo fia I le whewa inga o le aturu. O le nganga moni lava Samoa ma lau tāpua inga le nei aso. O lau mau o mai o na fofola matautino I sio tātou watunu. Ina watula I mai le whainga malo le whātua tua I le atua Samoa tasi. Mō le tātou savalinga nei ma le lumanai. E le mawhai o na le toi tutu whātasi. E le mawhai foi o na toi tapena le malo Samoa. Se whainga malo ua na o le malo. E mana o mia lava le langolango sua ale kālesia ma le tātou atunu. O te whaaleo I nai le nganga whaafitai o le whaamoe moe o lea ua angina o whaafofonga fo I ai le paia ma le mamalu o Samoa uma le lalolangi atoa. Ai meise ai lava le whaamoe moe mo New Zealand nei. E mamoli ai la o whaafitai tele I le fionga ia Anae, awha Anae, ona o le whaamoe moe o ia manisi fo I o tamali o le tunu. I le tātou whaamoe moe le tālu sanga, ina ia whaawhaingo fie, le uru whale mai o tātou tangata, I New Zealand nei. E leo te nā ma se laina, e le ima mao atu, talu o na tūla i mai whawhi tāuri le nei, o whainga tā tele tūlanga o le wheo ai o nei tātou tangata. Peitai, e iai tūlanga te taulava o na whamanino tūlanga o taimi whapenei. E tā ua le finangalo, e tā ua le tālusanga, e tā ua foi le awala na whai ai. Ona o le mea e wheso soani mo nei e tātou tangata umalava. O tiute o au nei ma le whainga malo ma le tato malo. O le ase mata upu tūla i mai po whea lava le tunu, po Amerika, po Australia, po New Zealand, po Hawaii, po Tutuila, aoni mata upu e tūla i mai se mea le lei mo le tunu. Ma mau ai se whesosoani mo tangata lau tele o le tunu, o ina, o te teletonu, e te tau o na tū wale tato malo e lango lango. O le alava la le itu ainga awala o lo ave el talsanga, o te teletonu le paia mo le mamalu, sa mo umolo alala i miusila nei, ele fau si au tau tau mwhainga. Aise a, o tātou o le tunu sa ili malo, e ma o le tunu e osi tau langa mo le tunu. Ma ele fau fo ile mea leo petitions whapene i futia o sola maa sa wale. Sa tātou vai lava le tū lai o nei o tātou ta māmatina na asaina, le ngasu o le tai au i miusila nei. E whaua wale tātou whinau. Whinau i lea. Whinau mo se manuia, ma le sairi ngā manongi. Ma le sairi ngā manu, mo le lumana i tupulango la lavao le tātou tunu. E le ima mao te le atu le whinau na whainei fo le sitiseni, di ia le atua. Ta mali i fo i o le tunu malato umana whinau ina le whamoe moe le taimi. E ui lava na le malama lama le whawhawhenga iai o le tutu o le tātou malo le nā taimi. I al me siri ma le tāua, sa tau nuu ma le manuia. I le teimi le nei tula i atu le whainga malo whitwhilia mo le nei teimi wa uma o na o tau tino le paia ma le mamalu o Samoa e le mawhai. Le mawhai o le toi o ese le malo i le atu nuu tainane le kalisia. O lona wingi, o le tātou tutu whaatasi ise mata au koe manuia i Samoa nei ma le lumanai o le mea te tau na whai. Mai avatu ai le nganga whaafitai lau whionga Anae awha ia malwhala tonga umolo tau mwhaia le nei whamoe moe. E lei titi le sao tā ua, aisea e au le tau wola au le whamota. E malanga mai o tātou ainga i Samoa mo whale velave, a tā upu ma whale ainga me whale tu malo, me whale nuu, me whale kalisia, peitai. O tātou mai te wina le te leo le fianga o nol poloka, ui o lea. Au tātou te loto vai vai, ei au wala e whaia. Mai avatu ai la lango lango le mta upu o le uforsi malai, o le utou amata mea, o isi fo ia au wala whaate mo kalasi. E wha leo ai le anga nuu, le ai a te tau, a tangata nuu, la tau te wha leo i nai o la tau langona. Mamanatu, ini mta upu e fito i tonu i le manuia o tangata nuu lau tele. Le ale ta ia sa ufa matalanga i le lau tele, o le mta upu anga i tangata al Pasifika. Ai whaftai tu fo i le whiunga e Anae malana fo i te whātou whala inga. O tātou le manatu na o tātou, ai a fia umal Pasifika atoa i le tamu whainga. Ina ia Mosef so soani i whaingo fieina, whaingo fieina. O leo mai o tangata i nei, i le ngata i Samoa. A o le vasa Pasifika, o le au le taea i a te au nei o teitai i le malo, a le a fito i tonu se upu, i o tātou lawa tangata anu, o lo a whaina i le tūlanga lea. E iai le matau po e te tauna tātou mata i tūle le iai. Aisea, e iai po i whaaki tau li e tauna tātou li o ai. Ono lo iai misi o tātou atunu. Na malanga mai ho i nei. O le nei lava e no nofo whaasori tūlafono i nei overstayers. O matau pula nei, e whainga tā tele o na whi nau tūlanga o matau po whapene. Pea whapeo le whi nau watu le tātou whi nau le nei la whai. A o lo lape la pea, matau tau lia. Ono lea, e iei tātou tangata no mai nei tāwasanga wha peo mai visitors visa, o visa whai ngā luenga, peo mai ngā luenga wha waitei. E mai sola i nei. O le tūla lea, e te tau ana matua tātou tūtua aire le iei le pa ia mali mamalu o Samoa. A whaiwa tātou tāwasanga tātou te whi nau le malo New Zealand i le mita upure nei. O lona winga, e lena o New Zealand e te tau na pui pui. E tau whai na pui pui matula i le malo Samoa. Ina ia whaile ngai ngoinga, o aise tangata e sau nei pe atalia o tau sama. Taunto e fo i Samoa pe a umar piriota na whaatanga e no fo i nei. A whai le merena e ma I mau le taimi o le tāsanga le whai. Aisea, e vai mai New Zealand, e iai le tātou matafa ioi, e te tau na whai, o le pui pui o tūlanga I. Ina ia auane I whaafi tā uli fo I mō lātou I nei. Ma o le tūlanga le nā te tau o na malamalama mamanino ai wale e lua, e whawhengo fi aila o mai tau le mta upu. Wa umana ma wheloa I le lei, ma le fionga ia Anae, a whanae, ia ai mai se fo I le tūlanga o le taupulengo le nei mta upu. Ma o fautua I ai tūlanga nei. Whauau pere tālasanga o no lewa mata, tūlanga o le Arrival Petition. I tūlanga o le ai ata tau e mawhai ai o tau le inei New Zealand, tālasanga mtau whapenei. A le tūlai o au o le taitai o le malo ma le whainga malo. O te tapena fo I le tālasanga aloa I e ui mai le malo, e whatino le tātou mtau. Mai o te tau tino atu o le awala sa o le nā, e te tau na tātou wia. Pawhetai o lewa amata mea o tau uma o lo langolangoina le wha moe moe. A le malo si anga o le tālasanga le nei, o le wā whaavao malo. E tala noa whaatasi au ma le maale mia o New Zealand, ma le malo o New Zealand, I tūlanga wha le malo. O le malo I le malo, ia matūlanga e whai ai le tonu whaavao malo, langa o mta upu nei, e lalo o aia ingo Toleafoa, o aia inga o wheo inga I le tūlanga o immigration, me se fo le foreign affairs, tūlanga I le wā whaavao malo, o lo iei Toleafoa e puipui ai le malo New Zealand, e foi Toleafoa e puipui ai le malo Samoa. O lo ta pena le tātou whengainga ma New Zealand e toi whafau. Na e tasi le nei mau o lewa o tu ua te tonu, e ta pena mai. E ave ele tātou tālusanga alo ia ma lo Samoa le ma lo New Zealand. Wha malu si ele tūlanga leo tālusanga ina le fionga e Anae, malana foi whala tonga. O mea le lei umalawa, e lei se tua oi o mea le lei. A ia te tauna tātou loa le malo si anga e mawhai o nou tō mauaina. Pe aui mai le tūlanga o le tātou whainga malo, ma le talanoanga malo I le malo. Ia o manatuai e vatu le wha malo si au, pa ia ma le mamalu, langolangoina le nei wha moe moe wha aftai. Lango nei ta pena i tae ao, nei fo ta pena I tūlanga uma mo le manuia tupulanga la lavaoa. Ai mai si foi le lio I le wafa whenga iai, o le wheo ai o nei tātou tangata, o le o atu mō mai. Ia mai ele tūlanga lea, o le aleto isi si toi te toi Samoa, pe a wheta tala lea banoa, mō tūlanga whapenei. E le te tau la, o na tātou so o na whaia pe vale tu lima, taun tātou wola mana tu natu le lei, leanga o le lango mate tasi, e leanga o mai suau. Ina rea vea tangata to tasi, e ta ubalea umai, ma puni ti ai, ma awhai nai, ma mafa ti ai tātou o lo fia whewa I mai whaale velabe, o maliu ma mea uma. O lo puni ti ai la vanone na o le tātou te mawhatia I te mli nei. Ai watu pela o whaamalu si au, o se ele tātou whaamoe moe nei tu I nātu le malo New Zealand, ia ai mole loma nai. Mole luma nai ma le whaaso longa lea luaru I luma. Ia o le ala lea. Tauna whaamau popu le lei, ia le tātou whono whautua, I le tātou watunu, o le lava o te mai taufo I nei, ia ele o mapo. Ona watofu ale tangata ia malana whala wetoso, a o mai tau, o sa valivali a ngai le wha I tu tino ese. Ia a o le rumana, e le mawhai una tātou wō tā ape ape. Tau lava na tasi le tu tino le whono whautua Samoa le tau ta pena nei. Ma o le whono whautua le nā, o mai au no utua lalo le fionga le konsula, o ina e tua I le leo le malo, Efeso soani, mo Samoa uma o lo lalam papa ao, au Kilani, Wellingtone, ia makaraistete, o lo mana o mia fesosoani I mata upu uma, e afiai tatou whainga malo matangata anu uma o Samoa, o lo lala papa ao I New Zealand nei. Whapena foi whaso solo atu inisio tatou nutua oi, Australia, ia ma Amerika, ia matutuila ma wai, o whea lava le mea o lo iai tātou tangata nu Samoa, o le wha moe moe o le malo, e tutu mo le mea o iai le tunu. E le tue whaia le mea leo tutu ma o le malo, e le ai, o lau lea whaulasanga, ma lau tau tinonga. Na ala na whai o tātou ofisa tutu tonu I New Zealand nei, pe ona yel tato ofisa tu tonu sai kai ke ro leo si fi mail tato ofisa tu tonu I Mangere lo fi tato consula lo yel tato ofisa tu tonu I Wellington il tato ai komsina o fisa umana o leale me mana o mia e tangata Samoa uma se fesosoani o ina e tau te fale iai o le tato maota lena ma le sulfa inga male malua papa fo lena o so se Samoa o New Zealand nei o no foanga o lo tu o le tato malo o sui va ai o le tato malo I New Zealand nei ai komsina malona ofisa I Wellington o le consula o Samoa consula fa aftau inga ma le ofisa atoa au kilani nei o le matawhai oi o le vaaia o mata upu uma tau I le manuia o Samoa o lo lalam papa au I New Zealand nei ai sidi ai vafa avao malo I le tapenanga o atinae mo le tatou atunuu I Samoa ea na manatu le nei aso pa ia ma le mamalu o le tatou atunuu fatasi mai vea le nei lau taua e batu le nei tautalanga I pa ia ma le mamalu le tatou mafutanga ina ia no foilo ma ia tau sila fia lea nganga o leu fatulanga ai le tatou whainga malo firi e fau mo le numana o lava ia taimi au ese o ta ape o le maupopo la talsanga a tatou tu fatasi o na malosi lea ma manuia le tatou mau fina fatasi a tatou o ta ape e leise me tasi e maua ai se ai vau ese mau ese talitonu ese e ona tatou o le tūlanga e le mautu se mere lei mo tatou I New Zealand nei ia alofa mai le tu pul tele o morilo o nganga faaftai fai waise famtalanga I le mafutanga atama uma tai e kalesia fono tua fale nganga I au kilani nei au fionga te fono tui te fono ia tainani foi le paia o le laulau fono mal komiti atoa le mamalu e kalesia ese me sosto vine o lau tatalo a fai le malu Samoa I lona fale e malu I lo tō mota o le tatalo lea ma o le mea iai lau fai ngā luenga te tofi e le atua I atunu ese o ina e wha mau popo I le atunu ia alo ia iau tō fai wā manaia o nāle nei e wano tāua mo le atua I lau wha malu si au le fionga ia Anae afa ia o se lupe wha lele o leva foi lana tautua a wale malo Samoa a wale foi le malo New Zealand e le tau iso ona fai walo filima e ala ia tina ese a ona foi fai walo filima na iau fale ai se tasi o Samoa mua na u fale tono al pari mene o Samoa ia o le paia lava lea wale inga taua ana ma le latu tama na lue wha matulo sa longo wale ni fofia ma upu ia fale latai ia tainane foi le paia ia fa savalu malona ainga sa luma o va pe au tama tau sala o le paia lava lea o mata no nofo mai le ta wiso matau fa ilo ainga moli le nanga fa teitele o lo ma losi o te toe Anae ia fa au le tua ina ia tau tua Samoa al talo tatou felongo nai pea nei taimi o tu lai fai ngā malo e te tala lo fai te toa fai tatou fa soi me umma manui ai Samoa o lo lala ma papa au ia tunu nei pa io Samoa wa ufanga poto le nei aso tala iatu le tala le nei e le mawhai o na tatou maua se mere lei a tatou mau ese o le whamo e moe le lumanai wa mawai atu vasa le watu la il whai ngā malo o lava o mai la i e fusi whatasi le whau malo tu atu a ao le tatou watunu tu mai a ao le kalesia o atu o mātou lima o taitai o le malo tu whatasi maosi le tatou taulanga I le atua ina ia manuia o tatou whaiva nei ma le lumanai manuia le whaatau saunga le nei aso manuia foi pol kalame ummo lo tutoe tatou velo e pei luma o talo sanga I le lofa ma leanga le leo le tatou tapa usiri le langi manuia sa mo ummo lala ia tunu mamao mai se New Zealand whapea tapo I mai Samoa soifua mai manuia
Oisa tu patipati le sauranga le fionga I le ali parmi o le malo tu totasi o Samoa ia o le vano nei tuna lau fionga le konsula ia mo sauranga o la mla fai u tatu whamu mo le fiafi malo wharolo ia o te tula I ma le nganga wharolo e wale pa ia poto mai i le tātou maota nei le maota o Samoa o sunga le whawhengainga tai o le sauninga e masi fo i le pa i o le au whaingarunga tofi e le tua lau whionga le te whono o le mau e masi le Pacific Justice le komiti whafoe ia e a Samoa o poto o lea o tō whaafonga manino i le saunoanga le whionga i le pare mia o Samoa. Le alafo i leo lo u whaitete o te musu o na tusai ma whinga whawai a saunoro le pare mia ia o le isisi mwhai o no te tau tara a me se lava i tūlanga whawao maro. Pita ia ni pe mai lo whionga Anae o le isa utala. A le nganga maulunga leo te whaamarurua te fōi ini tau ma whainga o tōna e le tūlai mai le whinga maro o i nei. O na ia manino le position o le maro i isu whapenei. Lea la o manino, lea o manino le tūlai mai le whinga maro fōu e pe o nei e nei. Ina ia tātou whina wina le wha moe moe pe o na ngapa tia e lo whionga Anae e me se tātou komiti e ala pa ia o Samoa. O le wha whita au lea po challenges lea whea ngai mal tātou ofisa o le konsula i au Kilani. Whapea whai mo Wellington o le su atu o le pa ia ma le mamalu o le tunu e tāra sanga le tūlanga lea whea ngai ma maliu ma wha lave lave whea ngai ma siu tātou tunu i New Zealand a o le whaingatana mo o visa. Rita iane o lea o iai le talitununga ia whaatasi e ma le saunanga whionga le ripa le mia ia e te tū whaatasi le malo ma le o manino le whina ngaro le malo i le mata upu nei. O le mera lea la o whionga le te whono le o whionga i le taua ana pa pere tātou komiti tātou tū whaatasi ma tātou ngalo ue whaatasi i le nei whaamoemoe. E le ngata fo i le whaamoemoe ia o nisi whaamoemoe le lumanai o wale manuia o sio tātou tunu. E ia o na saunoa e tu tū whaatasi le tunu ma le ekalesia ia whaatasi ma le malo le ia tātou tu whaatasi e malosi ai ia e maise ia whaingofia i mata upu whapenei mo le manuia o sio tātou tunu. Me la le le po e le whamata whauroina se whamatalanga o lawa lea ia whamalo whaaftai lau whionga le tawana. Ua whionga Anae ia e maise lau tō komiti ia masamo umma o roo tau mo whaile nei tau mwhainga o te talitonu. E le ai ia se Samoa o loo iei lea nganga lea. Ai o le winga leo tātou e whaatutu. Ia a tātou whaavai e ima tātou. I lea ia se me tau nuu malmanuia. Me la lea o loo moli atu ile nganga whaaftai. Ia o no loutou whaamara losi ma loutou on sa. Ia me se lava moli whaamoe tā ua e peo na whina wina. Ia tātou tūla i rumo le atua. Le o manino le tūlanga le malo. E tu sahi ma le mata upo peo na whina wai. Tātou whaamoe le atua. E whi soni mai ina ia manuia la tātou mau tu sai ma le whi soni mō visa e whaingofia maranga ina le tātou tunu ia manuia lau whionga ma le tātou komiti ia e mesen pa ia Samoa poto so i fua ma ia manuia